Generational poverty is characterized by a family experiencing poverty for 2 or more generations, and it can be difficult to escape. It's also a significant issue here in Memphis. University of Memphis 2024 poverty fact sheet shows that a child born into a low-income family in Memphis has a very low chance of becoming a high-income adult, further perpetuating that cycle.
Well, joined today by a man who has spent his life trying to change these facts. This is the executive director of Advance Memphis, an organization working to break cycles of generational poverty. So welcome, Steve Nash. We're thrilled to have you back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you here. And we have to note, Steve suffered a bicycle injury and a broken collarbone. We're so sorry to hear about that. So thanks for being a trooper and coming in anyway.
Sure.
Definitely appreciate it.
That was back last month. So fortunately, I hope you're not in any pain right now. But you started Advance Memphis on Vance Avenue originally, right there, and back in 1999. What pushed you actually to make a difference in that community of South Memphis?
Well, Ken Bennett was there with Streets Ministries. I was volunteering there. And then I've always had a heart for folks that are not seen. And so it just made sense. And I was in a business transition. And the chairman of the board, Bubba Halliday, of Streets was asking I was asking questions with the board of advisors about making a career change. And all of a sudden, it was all these young men and women coming through Streets, and then it's time for a job. And so it just all of a sudden came together that I would like to step in and give that a shot. And so I quit my job, and the next day I showed up and started building relationships that haven't stopped.
That's amazing. And on your website, your vision states you work to build economic stability in South Memphis. How do you do that, and why South Memphis in particular?
Well, that's where Streets was. So that's where I had relationships. And so that's why that particular neighborhood. So 38126 and 38106. And as far as building financial stability, that comes from having a job, a permanent job. That also, it matters how you spend your money. So teaching a financial literacy class is really important. And then when credit scores are low or debt's high, that's an interrupter. And so really grateful for Michael Johnson, who's on staff. And so we've started a new class called Thrive that's really focusing on that area, as well as investments. You know, the education of a 529, a 401k, and having financial incentives, where we're really going back to graduates of that 12-week financial class, where you also have the match savings account, and adding just another, let's go deeper. And it also is helping us reconnect with our neighbors. And so these are tools and pieces that you need to get to that financial health, as well as you've got to have underneath this emotional health that really interrupts a lot of this. So that's kind of our work, and it's a long relational walk where you're building trust.
Right. So I've driven down Bellevue and seen signs for Advance Memphis where you have a forklift, and you've given forklift training, because this is America's distribution center still. And so there are tons of forklift related jobs and that sort of thing. You've been involved with that, but you just mentioned emotional training. And could you be clear and specific about what you mean by that you want to have Advance Memphis now step into this role of helping our community become more emotionally mature?
Sure. Well, that's back in 2013. We had a licensed counselor on staff part-time, but we've been working in this space of ACEs and trauma-informed care. And so where this emotional regulation shows up is a recent example would be a lady who found herself back with in an abusive situation. But as far as grounding and that emotional regulation with breathing, this time she just started doing that breathing and she stayed calm. And then there's co-regulation, and this didn't escalate. And so that kind of stuff, when you're working side by side in one of our warehouses and you get triggered, well, you leave. Well, then you got a short paycheck. Well, then you're not at work the next day. And so we've got turnover. And so this is underneath, and it's really valuable that I think it's really going to change some outcomes. And so excited, and even down in Florida, you know, there's a trauma-informed city. And so that's even moved into a trauma-informed state. And so our work, we're seeing fruit from that. That is really supporting the workforce development being stable and healthy. And so that's a place where we're really growing and excited with the fruit that we're seeing. So if you come by, you're gonna get introduced to that and what we're learning. But we really would love to see South Memphis be a trauma-informed community, because I think that that's at work. And I think as that matures, we're going to be really excited about some of the other things that we talk about in our city that are reducing.
Right. Well, Steve, we're about out of time, but anyone out there who's watching who may live in the area where you service, or someone who may be inspired to volunteer, what should they do? How do they contact you?
Well, right now, Curtis Hines and his staff would love to see you come in, because we're recruiting for our next work-life class, Soft Skills. It starts on Monday. So right now is the time for neighbors to come. Volunteers, just call us at 901-543-8525. We've got skilled volunteer and just regular volunteer opportunities that
just
you
Google
find
you
out.
Guys, right?
You can do that, and we'll get connected.
All right,
so thank
great.
you so much, Joe. And
Thank you for the
you.
incredible contribution you've made to our city, quietly but meaningfully, and especially with this new effort on trauma
Yes,
and
thank you.
informing our community. So thank you so much.
Sure.
As we